Alright, we're out in the distinctly cold shop again. But one or two things I was going to add as interest items. This is one of them. This is a relatively cheap, I forget how much it was, but it was relatively cheap metal shear. It's proved very useful, and as it is in standard trim, it's fixed to the end of a woodworking bench, and there's a load of junk on it. I think you're used to me and my junk if you've seen other videos. So it's just a simple shear. Quite effective, deals with moderately thick material. I'll just point out before we go and look at the parts that I made to modify it, which made quite a difference to operation. The blade, the main cutting blade, the base blade, shall we say, is fixed to the frame, and I've got 3 extra holes. So you've got one hole there, one hole there, another hole there. That's they're drilled and tapped to take some bolts. It's quite a substantial frame. And now let's go and have a look at the components and then come back and reassemble. Alrighty, and the 3 holes that we mentioned on the metal shear frame correspond with the holes here, and I think these are about 3/8, and I've used bolts that were convenient, so we got 3 3/8 here to mate up with the body of the shear. And then on the top surface I've actually got 6 holes. I'm only using 2 of them actually. See if we can see those. There are 6 there. I think I drilled those as an experiment to see what worked out best. And the ones that I used, looking underneath, were actually this one and this one. And what we put on there, we got a lump of whatever this is. I think this is nominally 2 by, it's metric I think, it looks like 2 by half, but it's metric, so it's just under. So we drilled a couple of holes here, just clearance holes with countersinks, and then in the middle there's another hole, and that is drilled and tapped, and it takes this Allen bolt, which is a metric. I guess that's 6. Alright, so what we're going to do here is put this piece on top, sorry, the other way around, I just remembered. That's going to go on top of the angle. The angle, by the way, is 3 by 2 by 1/4. I didn't mention. Any old angle will do as long as it's a nice beefy piece. So this is going to go on here, and to that end we've got a couple of metric countersinks, and we can put these in place now, just to show that, rather than assemble it on the machine itself, because it's harder to get at. Alright, so that will go on there. I'll just get that bolted up and then we'll proceed. Alright, so we've got this plate fixed on there. The countersunks are there for a reason, so that they're below the level of the plate, and then underneath just simply bolted up. Alright, now the next piece that we put on here is a piece of 5/8 by 1/4. Bear in mind that most of the material I use is what I've got. When I have a project in mind, I think, what have I got that'll work? So my sizing is very much a case of convenience, what suits and what I can work with. Now this piece actually happens to be 8.5 inches long, which I think is pretty academic. It just suits the purpose. Now this end, just got to put a couple of washers on here, and this end here has a clearance hole, and then we've got 3 equi-spaced holes drilled and tapped 6mm thread, and this 6mm goes through the end. It's going to act as a pivot, so we can put that on. I haven't got my Allen wrench to tighten it up, but that doesn't really matter too much. What it's doing is pivoting on this plate, the idea being that it can go from, it can sit in this position when it's not used, or come to this position when it's in use, and you'll see soon why it does that. Now I'm going to sidetrack here momentarily. We've got 3 locking screws. I'm going to try and show you one. Now this was turned down from a piece of 3/4, and it was knurled, and it's actually been turned down to a 6mm thread. I think it's a 6 again. For some reason 6 was very convenient. This, however, is the fine 6 by 0.75, I can't remember. Doesn't matter. What I wanted to point out was, if we can keep this in focus here, you see that knurl? You see how coarse that knurl is? Now what I want to point out here is this knurl here was the test piece that we used for, let's make sure I can keep that sharp. That was the test piece we used with my straddle knurling demonstration. Now if you look at the two, you'll notice that this one is the coarse knurl and that one is fine, and that's with the same set of wheels. I'm digressing here, but I wanted to point this out because, as I said in the straddle knurling video, if we present the wheels very aggressively we can get this very coarse knurl. Right, so we've got coarse and fine options. Anyway, that's a digression, as I said. These pieces go in this shall we say, swing arm. And I'll put these all in. Alright, what we've got then is a pivotal arm with 3 locking screws, and these are bearing down at the moment on the angle. So what this is for, quite simply, as an extra to increase the versatility of the shear, is we can put a piece of work underneath. That just comes to hand. We're also set square. Sorry, my hand's going to get in the way. And we're also set square on here, so we present the workpiece to the shear blade at 90 degrees without having to guess it. And then if the piece is larger, we can use a couple of other locking screws. Alright, there you are, that's all it is. And I'm going to go back and fit it to the shear, and you can see it in its in position, and then we'll just put a piece of steel through it, or aluminum or something. Alright, well here we are back at the shear, surrounded by the junk on my woodworking bench. It's got too much junk on it to be of any use except parking junk. Anyway, just putting this piece of angle and its extras back in place. And to wrap up the description here, you've seen me put it together. This level across here, although that looks lower in the middle, which it is, the angle is level with the anvil section of the cutting blade. This swing arm can come over here to be completely out of the way, or we can bring it across for clamping. So I'll just very briefly, I'm just going to take a cut on this little piece of aluminum, which is not the most challenging to cut. And there we are. And if I want to take another sliver off there, which I might say wants to be, let's say I want about a ½ inch, I'm just guessing. And there we've got, well, that's the piece I just cut off. And normally you'd use this for larger work. I just happen to be using this little sample piece of aluminum. But if you're cutting repeated cuts and you want to mark up, have your lines and cut off sections, this makes it easier. And the point is, probably most of all, is that the work stays square. That now is square to the cutting blade, and it's a lot easier than guessing it by eye. So there you go, just a little extra to add to one of these fairly inexpensive metal shears, but it does add some versatility, a bit more accuracy, a bit more control.